All right, we are live. Ray, can you hear me?
10-4.
All right. So this interview process, I think, has been a complete mess at this point. I I don't know why. I don't know why they're interviewing coaches without a GM in place, unless the process or the idea is you're only going to bring in guys for second interviews once you hire a GM. But to be real, like I don't know who wants this job. I mean, think about it. Munkin, Cliff Kingsbury, Liam Cohen, they either have told the Jets no, have made it clear in the media that they don't want to coach the Jets, or they just don't have any interviews set up and we haven't really heard anything. I wanted Vrabel. Once they got rid of Mayo, we kind of knew that was going to happen. So the next best thing, I think, is either going to be Glenn or McCown is coming in as a dark horse now. I don't think Brian Flores is a good fit after hearing it's not just what Ryan Fitzpatrick said a few days ago. Like you hear a lot of kind of negative things about him. I just kind of at this point I think a lot of us will just want at least the GM process to be over.
Right.
I don't think anybody has really blown them away per se in the interview process.
Well, I don't know if it's blowing them away from obviously this video that we're about to go over with you guys. I listened to a little bit of it, but it looks like Woody Johnson's making all the decisions. It's not going to be up to this 33rd team. They're probably getting paid per hour to bring these guys in. I would do the same thing they're doing. They're making a binder of all these candidates that they like, and it's a complete crap show. How many guys do you need to bring in? And unfortunately, like Bergonzi, who a lot of us Jeff fans wanted for the general manager position, is already getting his second interview with Tennessee. Like, what are we waiting for? How are we firing everybody first and we are behind the 8 ball? It's like there's a reason why Woody Johnson is widely regarded as the worst owner in sports. Like, it is really bad. It really is. And I'm not saying we're going to get a bad candidate. At the end of the day, we don't know what a Josh McCown would be. It's exciting to think because it's the unknown, but odds are most of those don't work out. And let's be honest, Pat, we don't have a quarterback. So it almost doesn't matter who you bring in here. I like Glenn. I think he'd make a good coach for the right team. But at the end of the day, he's going to come here and win 4 games next year? Most likely Aaron Rodgers isn't back. We saw that article for Rich Cimini. He said, 10% chance that Rodgers is back? So it's just a complete crap show. They're bringing in more guys. Other teams are on their second. They're going to be on their third interviews. And we're still lagging behind. We are always behind the 8 ball.
I know it's hearsay, but the whole quarterback situation is why Liam Cohen said no, basically, right? He
That's
said
why Ben Johnson said no too. Let's be real. Anybody who's got choices.
At least from the offensive side of the ball. And that's why McCown is coming in as like this dark horse that everybody thinks is going to be a great head coach. I don't think he's going to be a great head coach, but maybe he's just kind of a stopgap guy for a year or two. Who knows?
Well, I'll tell you this. Look, I'll pull this up.
I don't want to. It's just the endless rebuild. It's the endless rebuild.
Yeah. Because if you bring in, if you bring really quick, if you bring in a coach that's any good, you win 6 games next year. You're still screwed. I want to bring this up before we bring up the video because you're
right. You're still screwed. You're going to end up with outside of a top 5 pick, probably, right?
Right. I want to pull this up really quick. It's from U Stadium. It's the betting odds, and Slowick is actually the betting odds favorite right now. The offensive coordinator with the Texans, who after that performance in the second half by Stroud, I'm sure his stock has gone through the roof. Brian Flores, who I actually I think he's going to end up being the coach. I really do. I don't know why. It's a gut feeling. You're starting to hear the rumors around the NFL about that. And then you have Joe Brady and Aaron Glenn tied. I would like Slowick, but here's the issue. If you're going to bring in one of these young offensive innovators, you need a quarterback. Tyrod Taylor? I mean, the guy's ancient, just like Aaron Rodgers. Unless
right. Go ahead, say it.
Unless, and I just heard this today, I believe I'll look it up really quick while Pat's talking. I believe Quinn Ewers has declared for the NFL draft. He's not going to take that NIL deal. So if you wanted to, and look, I'm a Texas fan, don't think he's that good, but he's had the promise of being a first round pick coming into this past year. Do you get him in the second round and think Slowick uses a year to develop him? You have the Jordan Travis here, hoping one of these guys can hit, because drafting a quarterback in the first round is just not viable right now. There's too many teams ahead of you that need quarterbacks. The Giants, the Raiders are ahead of us, Tennessee, all these teams that need quarterbacks, they're going to go. And Quinn Ewers is not going to go early in the first round. Maybe he's a candidate where you trade into the back end like the Ravens did years ago for Lamar Jackson. But if you're going to bring in one of these offensive minds, I want them to bring in their quarterback. I don't want to hear the excuse, because it's coming, Pat. The excuse is coming in 2 years. Well, I know what the Giants did. The Giants didn't draft Daniel Jones, their current administration. They gave him the contract extension, and now they're crying boo-hoo, we never got our guy. And now they're getting another year out of it. Thank God, because, again, they would be a better job than we are, because where they're drafting and the talent they have on defense. But that's kind of where it is. And I would love to get your opinion on what you Stadium posted about the betting odds.
I mean, I don't take too much stock into betting odds, honestly, especially when it comes to head coaching and GM candidates. The only thing that, as long as this new regime comes in and is honest with everybody and says, this is going to be like a breakdown year, then I'm fine with it, right? Set yourself up from a cap standpoint and from a personnel standpoint to take advantage in 26. And all these people that want to keep Aaron Rodgers, the money just doesn't make sense. I've said it so many times.
Yep.
You can't be paying this guy or have him on your cap through 28, 29. It just doesn't make sense. It's not going to work, especially when everybody wants to keep that 2022 draft class.
Yep.
100%. You're gonna pick up fifth-year options in 2026 while also having a $35 million dead cap hit. It's not going to work.
Really quick, I just looked it up. Ian Thamel, who's the senior writer for ESPN, said Quinn is 100% going to be declaring for the NFL draft, and I believe he did today. So add another quarterback to the fold. And Pat, every year we see it. Who saw Bo Nix going where he went last year to Denver and showing out with Sean Payton? By the way, remember Jet fans going into the season were mocking Sean Payton in that roster? I was there for that crap fest. I was there for the missed field goal. I sat in the rain with Paul Riley. What a disaster. But I had the video ready to be pulled up. This was earlier today. Boomer and Gio. Obviously, Boomer's plugged in. Former New York Jet, MVP.
He nailed the Devontae Adams thing.
Yep. I will say this, and I'll never forget this. I was driving to work years ago, and he was screaming for the Giants to draft Dwayne Haskins. God rest his soul. Nothing about him personally. But he's like, look at the thighs on this guy. I'm telling you, he's going to be a winner for years to come. Not always right. And that's why prospects are suspects, I guess. But let's give this a listen. It's short, but it's really interesting what Woody ends up saying.
What I understand about this Jet hiring cycle right now is that Woody's making the decision. Woody is making the decision.
Well, I mean, who else would?
Well, I mean, there's
no GM right now.
I know there's usually a collaboration. There's usually an understanding. You sit down, you talk to a GM, and you say, okay, who could you work with? Could you work with this guy? Could you do this? Could you do that? And, Woody's trying to find the match made in heaven, I guess. But the reason it's taking so long and the reason that they're interviewing so many people is because he's being demanding. And he wants to get as many opinions
except guys who have won Super Bowls before, because they're not talking to Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, or John Gruden. But everybody else, it's really amazing when you put together a list and then there's three guys out there. I'm not saying that you have to hire these guys, but to have that many interviews and then not bring those guys in. And then I agree that Ben Johnson's not taking the Jet job. I've said that for months. But at least request him, get him in the building. He's the preeminent offensive mind in football right now. Pick his brain a little bit, see what he's doing right. ask certain questions that could help the organization. It just shows you that for the most part, they don't know what they're doing again.
Pat, does it get any worse than that? I
No.
mean, here's my thing, and maybe you disagree. I know maybe some people in the comments will disagree. Sometimes getting all these opinions, having too many Chiefs in the room and not enough Indians is not a good thing. I mean, you hire these guys to do a job, let them do their interviews and make their recommendation, and you pick from the 2 or 3 guys that they recommend. I mean, we are falling behind the 8 ball. These top end executives, I just seen a report before we came on today. Ben Johnson's likely going to the Raiders. Vrabel, our other top choice, is going to our division rival, who's got a young quarterback who showed a lot of promise last year. I mean, we are behind the 8 ball. Tennessee, another job. You have Jacksonville out there. They're going to get another one of the top coordinators. We're going to be left at the altar with the 2nd or 3rd, 4th, 5th, or even 6th best candidate. And we have no one to blame but Woody Johnson. You can't sit here today and say, well, Joe Douglas did this, Robert Saleh did that, because let's be honest, he fired them and it only got worse. It only got worse.
There's only one thing at this point that can occur that will kind of fix the opinion of everybody with this whole process. And that is the day after the Detroit Lions are eliminated or say win the Super Bowl, the Jets announce Aaron Glenn as their head coach. Because that would mean that they probably had like a handshake or an agreement on the side, and the 33rd team is just now racking up their bills.
Which happens all the time.
Which is fine. And if that were to happen, then I think everybody's opinion kind of changes about what occurred
or it could be
over the last month.
Slowick could be the same thing.
Could be. Yeah. It could be. And I was really hoping that they would get Munkin in here. I think is a possibility under the table that Slowick told him to go take a hike. I'm sorry, Munkin told him to go take a hike.
Right.
Because, in my green glasses, my green goggles, Jet fandom, I see Lamar Jackson, and then I see someone with a similar skill set in, say, Jordan Travis, if he's healthy. And you have Munkin running that offense with a quarterback who has that same type of skill set. And I could see that working. I could, and if it
he's got the run heavy. Fantastic. He's got the run heavy, right?
Right. And it would have to be with Jordan
Baltimore.
It would have to be with Jordan Travis. And you're telling me you can't get a great running game out of these 3 backs that we have?
My issue with that is I'm very Munkins ran that same offense with Lamar Jackson. He adapted to him. Now, to think that we're going to run that exact same offense, Jordan Travis is coming off a major injury.
And he had a setback.
Way slighter of stature. Everybody thinks Lamar Jackson is a skinny, fast guy. He is not. He is all of 220, 225, even 230 at times. And he's 6'3". He is jacked. And Jordan Travis is not. He also has a stronger arm. He's won MVPs. I mean, there's a major difference. I understand what a lot of people are saying, but if you're going to bring Munkin in, you're going to have to find somebody in the draft that not necessarily is Lamar Jackson, but of that that type of player, because I don't know if he could all of a sudden change his whole offense and go back to being conventional type play caller and having Quinn Ewers run his offense. That's
right. I think you need someone who you need a highly mobile, run option type of quarterback. Like if he had like Jaden Daniels, it'd be a perfect situation.
Well, yeah, if anybody had Jaden Daniels, perfect situation. I love that kid. Love them coming out. Very happy for Washington.
The quarterback situation is such a mess. I'm not opposed to them taking a quarterback this year, but it would have to be in the 2nd round. There's so many holes on the team. I don't think anybody's gonna know what they're gonna be thinking on the 7th pick.
Did you see what Armand commented right here? Morning. Why do you think the Jets have not requested interviews with Todd Munkin, Liam Cohen, and Cliff Kingsbury?
I think because they told the Jets they don't want to come, so don't bother.
Where's that little bell thing? Bing, bing. Pat nailed it. Why would you want to come here? There's no young quarterback on this roster. We could all say Jordan Travis. There's a reason why he went where he went, and it's not just injury.
Yeah.
Let's just be real.
He would have
Nothing-
been like a 3rd round pick, right? He would have been a
At
3rd round
best.
pick, and it would have it's still a project. I'm fine with them taking Quinn Ewers or Milrow in like the 2nd or 3rd round if they're there.
Right.
And I'm certainly interested to see what Drew Aller can turn into with another year at Penn State.
I think he's going to stink. I think a lot of
You
people
think?
look at him, they see a big white guy like Josh Allen, doesn't run as good, but he's got a strong arm, but he's not accurate. I don't know. I've never been sold on him. I wasn't sold on him this year. If you look at Penn State, they're good. They have a solid defense, and they have a lot of talent. That's why I think they were good. Just like Texas. Think about it. Whose stock dropped the most the last 2 weeks? Drew Aller and Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, if they
Talk
do
about
well, they'll
stock-
be a 1st-round pick.
Talk about stock dropping. Talk about Sam Darnold.
Ooh, Sammy boy. And I like Sam. I think Sam's a really good person, but he might have just cost himself $20 or $30 million. I think he
Yeah.
might have been looking at a Daniel Jones type contract, 2 years. We'll say 3 years, 120 million, but 80 million guaranteed, something like that. And I think he cost himself a lot of that. But I have a clip I want to run by really quickly, if you could. I don't know why. I just thought it was interesting because I think it's either going to be Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores. I really think
Gonna
that
be
because
Aaron Glenn. I'm telling you, I've told you from the start, it's gonna end up
Mhm.
being Aaron Glenn. I just think it is.
and these are reporters asking him about being a defensive guy.
Typically, Bill Belichick is a shining example of a defensive coach who won Super Bowls, but typically it's offensive coordinators. They come from the offense who become Super Bowl head-winning coaches.
Yeah.
Why do you think that might be?
Well, I don't know if that's truly accurate. I can just go off the top of my head with Bill Carr, Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick. That's won a ton of Super Bowls as a defensive coach. And here's the one thing that I would say about myself. I'm a coach. I just happen to be on defense. I understand the offense just as well as a number of people. So if you want to hire me, you're going to hire a coach. You're not going to hire a defensive coach. I'm going to talk to the offense just as much as I'm going to talk to the defense.
And it's interesting because you know what that reminds
Knows.
What does it remind you of? Oh my God. Who said it a couple years ago? I'm going to come in and be the CEO.
Yeah.
And then never sat in a quarterback's meeting his entire coaching career here.
Right. But going back and watching Hard Knocks from 2022, I think it was, there is no similarities between the way Saleh addresses his players and Glenn addresses his players.
Right.
I think there is a big difference, especially in the league with guys who have played before
Yes.
against guys who have not played. I think there's a big attitude difference. And if you haven't played before and you don't have that attitude, you have to have the scheme that works.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to.
And it's also the respect, Pat. I mean, he's played in the NFL. He was a 1st-round pick, a pretty damn good player. So when he's ripping these guys, and you know what? Like, he might be the guy, and it might be interesting to see. He might take Sauce to the next level. This secondary to the next level, this defense to the next level. But, is that exactly what we need? I don't know. We have this from Wild Wave. It feels like another forced marriage. They were talking about that on WFAN yesterday. Another shotgun marriage. Like, everybody's going to report to Woody Johnson. When does that work, Pat?
I think the way, there's 2 ways I see this going. They can hire a GM whenever they want. Right.
Right.
So, and apparently, just taking a step back, they tried to get Vrabel. They went back to him and tried to get him in the building, and he said no. So, one thing that there's 2
He
ways
got
I see
used
this
like the
going.
Yankees got used on Juan Soto.
Right. There's 2 ways I see this going. One, like I said before, there's either some sort of under the table agreement with Aaron Glenn, and once the lines are out of it, the announcement is made and we're done. Or they get the GM hired fairly soon because it's been a month at this point, and then he sits in on 2nd-round interviews. That's what I see happening, or that's what I would like to see happening. That's the only way I see out of the kind of discombobbled mess that they're in right now. And if I'm thinking about GMs, there's besides Borgonzi, which I think a lot of people feel is the number one option, even though he's
Yep.
going to have his second interview with the Titans.
They're going to have to
After
give him
that-
a massive contract, a Joe
Right.
Douglas type contract.
After that, I do like Gain out of Buffalo. He was a Parcells guy. I could see him and Glenn pairing up well. I also like Dimitrov, who they interviewed way back in the beginning. Dimitrov was this close to being a Super Bowl winning GM. He brought a lot of stability to the Falcons. He did. And for everybody, I mean, I hear a lot of people talking about, was it Grigson? I want nothing to do with him. He is the main reason why Andrew Luck retired early. His poor offensive line drafting is the number one culprit why Andrew Luck is not a quarterback in the league right now.
Yep.
So that guy can go take a hike. I think Aaron Glenn has the job. I think he knows it, and I think the 33rd team is just racking up the bill at this point.
Could be,
they're
and
bringing in everybody and anybody except McCarthy, Kingsbury, Munkin, and Liam Cohen. Which, again, guys who on the offensive side of the ball have better options.
Right. And Pat, let's be honest. I thought the same thing as you originally, that, maybe they're going to get their GM in here, conduct a second round of interviews. But how long are you going to wait?
Right.
Think about it. All the top coaching candidates are going to be gone. Who are you going to be interviewing? So it's really
at the end of the day, no one's hired a GM yet. The only hire that has happened yet is Vrabel. So there is no, as of 11 a.m. on the 16th of January, there is no rush right now because guys aren't coming off the board.
Well, Tennessee's going to get the
fair.
pick of the litter. Let's be honest. They got the picks. You know what I mean? That changes a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that's why I don't know, Pat. It's going to be really interesting. I hope it gets settled very soon. I hope you're right with this. I hope they have a target in mind. Two things. What do you think about that Brian Costello report that came out?
The one where Glenn.
It's Glenn's preferred job, the New York Jets, allegedly. Which might
We've
make
heard
sense.
that.
He
We
was
heard that
drafted
already.
here.
That was reported, I think, at the beginning of the process. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we drafted him. He didn't want to leave when he left. He left as part of the expansion draft, I think, to the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it makes sense to me. I get it. You know, he was not a Jet legend, but he was a very good player, right? He drafted in 94. My first game was in 94, going with my dad to Giant Stadium. You know, he was there for a very long time. He's a Parcells guy. He's a Belichick guy. He understands.
He's learned under a lot of people.
Right. He understands what it takes to put together a winning team. And he was part of that Lions rebuild. So I think he's the guy. I really do. I think he probably knows it already. Unless someone else in this process blows them away. It just makes too much sense.
What's going on with that Packers situation where they interviewed was the director of player personnel, something like that, and now now all of a sudden they're going to be interviewing the defensive coordinator? Could that be a marriage?
I think what happened was when they interviewed the front office guy in the meeting, he probably slipped the name. Hey, maybe you should talk to the defensive coordinator, and that's fine. Like again, a lot of people are up in arms about them interviewing anybody and everybody, and it does, from an outside perspective, look like a cluster.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no rush right now on hiring anybody because besides Vrabel, nobody else has been hired.
Well, as long as you don't lose your guy.
You know?
That's my biggest fear. We're going to get left at the altar again. We always seem to do that. Remember this. When we hired Todd Bowles, he was not the top candidate. When we hired Robert Saleh, he was not the top candidate. It's always the B guy, and it just never seems to work out. Like, we don't get the Kyle Shanahans. We don't get the
But
Ben
guess what?
Johnsons. We don't,
You know who was not top guys? Right? Campbell and Sirianni. And look at them.
You know what's wild? People in Philadelphia all hate Sirianni, but they have to.
All he does is win.
But you get the right general manager. You pick. It's like almost like college. If you have the better players, odds are you win. Right?
That's what it comes down to. But not so much in the NFL because everybody's a great player. I mean, you look at our roster before the season started. If you had told me back in August with the roster that we had, and and told me we were going to get Devontae Adams, Hassan Reddick, and Aaron Rodgers was going to play every single game, I would have told you 12, 13 wins, easy.
I know.
Coaching and scheme matter, especially in the NFL.
And I know we've been arguing about it on Spaces. I think the Jets are going to end up cutting Devontae Adams, taking that $8 million dead cap hit. If you cut him, you cut Aaron Rodgers, you take like $90 million next year, you reset. We're not going to win a ton. But the issue with that is when you do that reset, it might make guys like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner and Breece Hall and Jermaine Johnson, when he's back, say, you know what? I want to go to an organization that prioritizes winning.
Right.
There's no doubt that, look, every year the Bills are in it. Now every year the Lions are in it. The Chiefs are in it. So regardless of where they draft, they always seem to make it work. We're the only team that doesn't. Joe Douglas lived off that draft from years ago for how many years? It's
the only way you get around that, I think, is to bring in a head coach with a strong personality who's played in the league before. Right? And can sell to these guys, hey, we're going to take a step back this year in order to get things right. That's the only way that you kind of sell that. So there was another point I wanted to make, and then my mind is blanking.
Zach wrote, why are people so hung up on Jermaine Johnson?
Who's hung up on Jermaine Johnson?
No, I mean, I actually love the guy. Sauce and Garrett are the future. That's what he wrote afterwards. I understand that, Zach, but Jermaine Johnson, think about Will McDonald and what he was able to do this year with no pass rush on the other side. I mean, they brought in Hassan Reddick at a half sack. Jermaine Johnson has an upward trajectory. He's pretty damn good against the run, which the rest of the defensive line was not this year. So that's why people are hung up on him. He's a first-round pick. You should be hung up on him.
Yeah, but Achilles injuries for edges are rough to come back from. Don't expect him to come out of the gate firing in 2025. It's got to be kind of more of a rehab year. Like maybe towards the end of the season he comes on. And right there, he's talking about Carl Lawson.
That's a little different.
A little different, but again, Achilles, he was an older guy, but Achilles on an edge rusher, and all of a sudden you're not the same. So I get it.
What did Von Miller have?
I don't know. I got to look it up.
I know he got some major injury. I thought it was to his leg. Maybe not. But I like Jermaine Johnson a lot. It's going to be interesting to see whose fifth-year option actually gets picked up this year.
Here's what I wanted to bring up. Now I remember. We were talking about dead cap, and we're talking about cutting guys. Right now, as it stands, the Jets are dead last in cap turnover into 2025.
Dead cap Joe.
They only have about $300,000 to work with if everybody stays. And that's not realistic, right? So if you really want that clean slate in 2026, you're going to get rid of Aaron. You're going to get rid of Devontae. You're going to get rid of Lazard. You're going to get rid of DJ Reed. You're going to get rid of Conklin. Morgan Moses is gone. You're going to be replacing him, right? I think Kinlaw is a cap casualty, right? Why be stuck with that horrendous contract? Okay.
Yeah, well, Kinlaw's getting paid this year to sit at home. How about Mosley? I mean,
Right.
it's
Mosley will
time to
also
move on from this old
Mosley,
regime.
and I'm fine with getting rid of Mosley. If you look at Sherwood played fantastic this year. He was tied for first in solo
He's a
tackles.
free agent.
They have to keep him. They have
But
to.
do
And
they?
you
That's my thing though. If the people you sign this year, you have to project them into 26.
Yeah.
Because you're not winning anything this year. And you're not winning anything in 26 if you're going to draft a rookie linebacker. You're almost better off rolling that money over, not guaranteeing anything for 27, which is probably going to be the year that they actually try to go for it if they are able to hit on one of these quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I understand a lot of people want Glenn. I want the offensive guy. Bring me Slowick. I'm not saying he's fully responsible for what happened to CJ Stroud, but hopefully he'll be able to identify a quarterback in this class. Not every great quarterback comes in the first round. A la the Russell Wilsons, the Jalen Hurts. There's plenty of guys drafted throughout the NFL that are not first round picks. Dak Prescott comes to mind that are more than successful. And we need a coach that's able to identify a quarterback that's not going to be a top 5 pick because we're not going to have it. And I don't see us giving up the capital to get up there anyways because there's other teams that need that. You know?
It's all about that 26 draft. That's what it has to be. And the team has got to be honest with the fans.
Infrared Jets, I got us at 7 wins. I think you're nuts. I think we'll be lucky to win 4 games.
God, I hope we don't get 7 wins because we'll just be in
But
mediocre land.
That's what I've been saying, Pat. Yeah, bring in Glenn. He'll coach the hell out of this team. We'll draft 12th, and we'll miss out on a quarterback again.
This is what
That's
happens
why you-
when you
that's-
listen. This is what happens when you miss out on a top pick. Okay,
5 years, they always say.
Look. Regardless of what you think of Sam Darnold, he is and always has been a better quarterback than Zach Wilson.
It's not even close.
Not even close. And you're telling me that in the Zach Wilson draft, when the 49ers gave up 3 first-round picks to get to 3 and take Trey Lance, you couldn't get more for that second overall pick and keep Sam? I understand you had to pay Sam. That's fine. But would you have rather today, with the way Aaron Rodgers turned out, would you rather have Sam Darnold on your team, or would you rather have a 41-year-old quarterback who's going to destroy your cap if he's still on the team?
Yep.
Pick. Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh's fate was sealed when Zach Wilson at his pro day threw that bomb with no pass rush in no pads, going out to his left and throwing across his body.
Yep.
That's when our fate was sealed. We just didn't know it yet.
I mean, the only team that
You
gets away
missed
with
on
it is
Beck-
what, Trey Lance? 3 first-round picks.
Right. And then
now
you
they're
can
starting to feel it.
Right. And give Joe Douglas a little credit because he drafted a starting guard for the Eagles in Becton. So now my whole opinion of that draft has changed, right? Everybody says, "Oh, you missed on your left tackle." Like, okay, you can say that, but then why is he playing at a Pro Bowl level at guard for the Eagles right now?
Coaching. It matters.
Coaching. This was a toxic mix of terrible coaching and terrible drafting.
Yep.
And it's been like that since 2012, probably. We
100%.
had a lucky season in 2015 with 10 wins, but that's it. And realistically, this team is not going anywhere. We're not making the playoffs until 26 if the plan is executed correctly, or maybe 27. 14, 15, 16, 17 years of missing the playoffs.
And with Woody at the helm making these decisions, I have zero confidence. I just do.
It's not Woody. No, hold on. Woody's not making the decision. Brooke Johnson is.
Yes. His son, correct.
Don't worry about that. He's sitting in on Zoom calls from Harvard.
Unbelievable.
From the outside, from the outside, these athletic articles, you want to read them and you want to just completely bash the team, right? But then when you hear some of the explanations from the Brian Costello interview with Woody, it gives you a little bit of a different perspective. So how much
I
of
think
that
they're true.
I think
Just do.
I think some of it's true, and I think some of it is surely embellished a lot. Right? Could they be in a meeting and someone bring up in a joke like a Madden rating, and then someone who doesn't like Woody Johnson twist that? Sure, I could see that happening. I think that's
Right.
more likely than someone actually using Madden ratings to rank players.
I
Right?
agree. That's why I said Madden's got to come out with an owner's rating. Maybe Woody will sell them.
He's not selling. He's never going to sell. He's got no reason
I know.
to sell.
I know.
Owners sell for two reasons. They're either forced out, like what's his name? Washington. Snyder?
Yep. Dan Snyder.
Or they don't have a succession plan, which Woody has.
Yep.
Rick Johnson is going to be our actual owner at some point.
Probably when he's young too. I mean, Woody's up there. Next 10 years, he's going to be into his 80s, Woody? How old is he now?
70 something. Early 70s, I think.
Let's see. He's 77. He will be 78 in a couple months.
This year,
Well, odds are within the next
he's
10
had in 25 years, and not a single one of these guys went to the Pro Bowl.
And odds are within the next 10 years, his son at 20-something years old might be owning this team.
It's possible.
I mean, he's going to be 78 years old.
Yeah. I could see it. And you know what? Maybe it's a good thing at this point.
Unbelievable.
Do you really think Josh McCown is getting a look?
Of course, even though he shouldn't.
I mean, I hear the argument for him. Been around the league for so long, played for so many teams, has a lot of contacts. There are guys who are head coaches right now that are successful that were never coordinators.
I just don't know if Josh McCown, because obviously he was a backup. He's ran a lot of offenses, probably has a good scheme. I don't see him as a CEO type, but then again, I never saw Shanahan as one. I never saw Andy Reid. Those guys still all call their own plays.
Right.
I mean, that's what I always keep hearing. You got to have the CEO as a head coach. Where? Outside of Bill Belichick. I mean, it's working in Washington, but I mean,
I'll give you one, and their fans.
Sirianni?
No, Tomlin. And their fans are up in arms over how they've been mediocre.
I would trade 7 for him.
You would?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. The guy has never, Pat, had a losing season. He's had Kenny Pickett at his quarterback, washed up Russell Wilson. Nobody wants Justin Fields, and he always wins. I mean,
I'll take Justin Fields.
What I think is hysterical about all these Jet fans that fight with me on X. Oh, Tomlin hasn't won a Super Bowl in forever, and it wasn't his players. And I'm like, you're not winning a Super Bowl with him. I just want to get to the playoffs. It's been 14 years. There's no more of a sure thing. I'm very confident if Mike Tomlin was our head coach next year, we might not make the playoffs, but we'll be right there. We might be playing meaningful November football, dare I say. The season not be over by Halloween like it is every single year. I'm very confident in that. And also, I'm confident these bull crap penalties that we pull every single week will disappear. The roughing the passers, the jumping off sides, the hitting the player out of bounds, the taunting penalties, those will go out the door. And that's why I almost look at Aaron Glenn and I see bits and pieces of Mike Tomlin because he's more of a no-nonsense coach, just like he is. He talks very well. I don't know if he will be Mike Tomlin, but to me, it's the closest thing that we got. That's why I'm not going to
Yeah.
crap all over the Jets if he's the coach, but it also depends. He could be a great coach. You get a shitty GM in here, Pat. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. No matter who you brought in with John Izek, they were going to fail. No matter who you brought in with Mike McCagnon, they are going to fail. No matter who you had as the head coach with Joe Douglas, drafting Zach Wilson, drafting Mekhi Becton, drafting Stephen Hill, drafting Ashton Davis, they are going to fail. End of story. End of story. They didn't bring in a defensive tackle this year. We all knew our run game was going to suffer once you traded JFM. They brought in Javon Kinlaw, who couldn't shine the shoes of anybody on this team last year and pay him a boatload of money. That's the issue. They bring in Aaron Rodgers, who's 40 years old, coming out of his dark places. More drama. The circus is always freaking in town. That's why I'm for Aaron Glenn, because he feels, and I don't know this, but he feels like he'll be the adult in the freaking room. That somebody needs to tell Woody Johnson, do me a favor, Woody, get the hell out of my office and let me do my job. Like you saw John Mara in Hard Knocks. He's involved a lot, but he's won Super Bowls. Woody hasn't won anything, and he's in there telling guys what to do, who to draft. My son says this guy's got a 68 Madden rating, but this guy's got 72 with an A+ potential. Let's draft him. Like, get an adult in the goddamn room already.
I think, again, the only thing that's going to make all of this process seem better, and I've said it before, is if the day the Lions are eliminated or win the Super Bowl, Aaron Glenn is announced as the head coach, because then it all makes sense. Because it means that he kind of knew he had the job, and the 33rd team is just racking up bills.
Why not announce your GM then?
True.
First?
True. But again, glass half full. No one's hired GMs yet. There's no rush on it yet.
And nobody knows
I
who Glenn
understand
would have
Borgante,
recommended.
but that may be heating up now with Borgante taking his second interview. All right, guys, we're going to go. Let us know what you guys think in the comments about everything that we said, and we'll have some updates coming. Give us a like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching us, Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube. Yeah, we got a lot more content coming out. It's going to get crazy as the offseason goes. Ray, last thoughts?
It's our season, baby. Time to win another offseason.
Yeah, another offseason for offseason champs back to back to back.
We'll be having some draft people on that we've been having some conversations with. We plan on having a master space with the people over at U Stadium for the draft. I'm sure Pat and I will be doing something for the draft as well. I'm excited for that. As always, it's our best time of the year. And that's it.
All right.
See you guys
Thanks for hanging out, guys.